another life structure will begin to evolve. One example is that when the atomic structure of a person obtains electrons continually and the amount eventually reaches 900, added to their intrinsic 100, their non-material structure as person will disintegrate, and they will have taken a qualitative leap and attained the non-material structure of a celestial being. At this very moment, they will have reached death as a human being but be born as a celestial being. Another example is when the atomic structure of a person continually loses electrons. We can suppose that they lose 6 electrons for publicizing ghosts and monsters and polluting people's spirituality, 4 electrons for concocting various pretexts to force someone to bribe, 3 electrons for taking pleasure in other people's misfortune and ruining their success, 2 electrons for destroying mountains and woodlands, digging grasses, and filling ponds, 2 electrons for passing the buck to self-hold and shift their misfortune onto others, 1 electron for envying others' honor and high status and expecting others of falling in bad luck, and finally 1 electron for beating their spouse and nagging their sons and breaching etiquette toward elder family members. At this point, they will have lost 19 electrons in total. The number of their electrons remaining will only be 81. 100 minus 19 is equal to 81. At this moment, the structure of their life will be approaching that of a dog, and if they lose 1 more electron, then they will die immediately and reincarnate as one because their life structure as a human being will have degraded to that level, and they will no longer be able to exist as a person. This is why some people die suddenly in their youth, others die suddenly in car accidents, and still others die suddenly from heart attacks. Their number of electrons reaches the number of a higher or lower life structure at that moment, and they, in whatever way, have to begin a new life journey. Some aged people suffer for prolonged periods of time with illnesses in beds. This is because their number of electrons is changing too slowly, and in such situations they should not linger in the human world, but try to start their new journey ASAP. The bad solution would be to curse others, blaspheme the gods and Buddha, and abuse children. The good solution would be to wish for world peace, pray for everyone could live a happy and blessing life. May those who used to hurt them enjoy happy futures and long to go to the Elysium world themselves. They had better invite people who have good knowledge of 36-dimensional space, life transmigration theory to interpret the details and sceneries of higher-level life spaces in order to help them forget about their merits and demerits in this life, rid all of their sufferings in this mortal world, let go of all their unfulfilled wishes, and start a new journey with neither worries nor regrets. Occasionally, at the moment of a life's reincarnation, special situations occur. For example, someone's number of electrons might have reached the number needed for a new life structure, but their new life, home, has not yet become ready. They have to put up with it and wait temporarily, usually for less than a month. This is just like a person who wants to move, but their new house is not ready to accommodate them, so they have to remain in their old one for a short time. Where is the new residence? The new residence refers to the anode black hole body in 36-dimensional space, namely the womb. When a fetus enters into the womb, it becomes a new residence. From time immemorial, people have always thought of fetuses as lives, but they are actually not. Fetuses are just residences, not lives. Fetuses will not be lives until a reincarnated life enters into this residence through a space tunnel in 36-dimensional space. Generally speaking, a fetus will have life within only a few days before the baby is born, but some fetuses will be born a few days later than the expected date of childbirth because no life has entered into this residence quite yet. The number of humans on the earth is increasing quickly because the number of animals is decreasing proportionally. A large number of animals that have been killed by people have made great contributions to humans and have accumulated merits and virtues. As a result, these animals will reincarnate as humans, but the vast majority of people have not killed animals, so they cannot reincarnate as animals after they die. Therefore, the diminished number of animals will not be replenished in time. If such situations continue, the ecological system's balance will be broken and humans may face the greatest calamity at any time. There are 3 ways to correct such an imbalance. People could evolve towards the high-level life space and go to the 1,000-year world and the 10,000-year world so as to reduce their numbers. People could self-awaken. They need to control the continuous growth of their population, protect and let animals reproduce and develop and transfer, some people forcibly down to the animal level in order to maintain the ecological balance. Those people who are forcibly transformed downward will certainly be treated unjustly, but do not worry for them because the greatest creator will deposit large stocks of wealth in their banks. And when the ecological balance stabilizes, they will be reborn back into the human world with high positions and great wealth as compensation. If the above two solutions do not work, then the third one will come. Pestilence, war, and starvation will eliminate some people so as to relieve the ecological imbalance. Apart from that, there is a special solution. The coming of the last phase of an age, which was warned by Jesus in Sakyamuni. In that situation, every phenomenon in heaven will vibrate, the sun will blacken, the moon will no longer illuminate, and everyone will be scared to death. The emergence of life genuine is to enlighten people to avoid the coming of the last phase of the age. Gods and Buddhas are humane, and the greatest creator loves humanity. Now, so much about the evolution of life, you will have to figure the rest out for yourself. All scientists, philosophers, thinkers, and statesmen are welcome to join in this discussion and argue whether I am correct. If you do not agree, fine. Just continue to carry on in your old lifestyles. 生命的价值和意义 The value and meaning of life. Xiefeng. May 18, 2011. Translated by Treasure. Life is co-substantiated by life, but each are different entities. Life is only a single journey of life in the mortal world, but life exists eternally. The former can end at any time, but the later will continue on. A life may appear as a horse in the animal world in one life, then as a person in another, and then as a celestial being in the 10,000-year world in a third. It is like a person changing their clothes to meet changing weather conditions or the fashions of the times. Those different clothes are like different lives, and the person's body is like a life. The wild grasses grow in the fields lushly. They flourish in the spring and wither in the autumn each year. The wildfire can never burn them out because they will thrive when spring breeze blowing. Flourishing once and withering once is the life of grass. But as that life ends and then spring's warmth looms, their next life begins in a never-ending cycle, while life and growth continue endlessly. Why is grass endless? Because grass life exists eternally. People have many lives. This one, all the ones before, and all the ones still to come. Just as grass grows in spring and summer, withers in autumn and winter, has done so for countless seasons, and will continue to do so for countless more. The essence of life is a non-material structure with spirituality which is invisible, untouchable, and illustrates itself through life. This is like the essentialities, forms, and use of Tao. We cannot see Tao because it is a non-material existence, but we can know that all things in the universe are its manifestations through the images of the world and the use of all things. Life comes into view through material forms which are visible and palpable. All plants, animals, and people on Earth are visible and touchable lives. Life can also exist in non-material forms which are invisible, untouchable, and are in the non-material world, such as ghosts in the underworld, gods and Buddha in the Elysium world, and super-celestial beings from the Elysium Celestial Islands continent. All these are spiritual forms. It is just like people who appear in the material world as flesh and blood, but also in the non-material world, such as dreamland, in the form of spirits. Although the essence of life is a non-material structure with spirituality, it is difficult for people to understand it. We can view lives as souls and souls as lives. What are souls? They are consciousnesses wandering in the boundless ocean of psyche. We can simplify lives as consciousnesses to make them easier to understand. That is to say, lives are consciousnesses since the states of consciousnesses determine the existence form of lives and living environments. When a state of consciousness of a life is a pig, it lives in the livestock world in the form of a pig. When the state of consciousness of a life is a person, it appears in the material world in the form of a human being. When the state of consciousness of a life is a celestial, it appears in the form of a celestial being in the environment such as the 1,000-year world, the 10,000-year world, or the Elysium Celestial Islands continent. When the state of consciousness of a life is a god, it appears in the non-material world in the form of God. Why did Sun Wukong in Journey to the West have 72 changes in avatar? Because he had mastered the mystery of making consciousnesses change at will. As his consciousness changed, his form of life changed with it. Lives are hierarchical. Some belong to higher levels of life, while others belong to lower levels. For example, flying birds are higher levels than insects. Animals are higher levels than plants. People are higher levels than animals. Gods, Buddha, and celestials are higher levels than people. The greatest creator is the highest level of life. Bacteria are the lowest levels of life. After understanding this basic common sense, we know that higher levels of life have absolute power of life and death over lower levels, that lower levels serve them, and that all of them serve the greatest creator. We know that all lives serve higher levels of life, and the ultimate value is in serving the greatest creator. People raise chickens and pigs to serve people. If they did not, then they would lose their value for existence. Their loss of value for existence would surely result in their destruction. The value of the existence of people is to serve the greatest creator. If they do not, then they will lose their value of existence and will surely be made extinct. The so-called destruction does not mean that our lives would cease to exist, but that they could not exist as humans. They would have to be transformed into other forms, such as descending into the animal world to serve humans. So, what is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is to be an actor in the grand script of universal life. The entire universe is a great dramatic performance in which each life plays a role as required by the script. A reply to Moth Orchid. Moth Orchid, hello, guide. Most people are curious about the meaning of life, and I am no exception. While managing to survive, I try my best to lead a meaningful life. I fully understand and agree with your advice about paying off my debts and ending my worldly ties during this life, but I would like to know in addition to that, whether everyone has any other meaning in their life or a mission to improve their souls. How do I find out and understand it correctly? Guide. As an individual life, your life is not only an inevitable role to play in the big script, but it also has many plays within the big play as well, such as writing a script of life by yourself, being a director and an actor, marrying and having children, running a company, and so on. Those are the other meanings of life that you asked about. As for the mission of improving your soul, you cannot perceive this. Only higher levels of life know it. For example, Life and Celestials did not originally know their mission to sublimate their souls. They learned that only when they became Chanyuan Celestials. The best way to find and understand other meanings to your life and your mission to improve your soul correctly is to listen to the teaching and guidance of gods, Buddhas, celestial beings, and saints, and letting higher-level lives guide your way. Generally speaking, it is very difficult to realize it by yourself. Moth Orchid. As for you, would your life trajectory have been different were it not for the experience of your curious car accident? Would your life trajectory be very different now? If these changes had not occurred, would the meaning and value of the life you pursue be different? I wonder what the significance of the help and guidance that you provide to others is to yourself. Assuming that your values and views on life were different before and after the car accident, how have they respectively affected your soul? Guide. Without that car accident, there would be no Life Genuine and I would not have become the guide to life and life. I might have become the president of a company, in which case the trajectory of my life would be completely different. I would be pursuing money rather than to be reaping the ripe crops and ushering in the Life Genuine era for humans, not serving for the whole of mankind and all lives, but serving for a nuclear family and glorifying my ancestors. The value and meaning of my life would be totally different. The value and significance of what I do now, and what I do to help and guide you is to be rewarded as a super celestial being and to live on Barikia Island in the Elysium Celestial Islands continent. That car accident was the watershed of my life and the turning point of my life channel. Before the accident, I was confused. I knew neither where I came from nor where I was going. I only knew to keep myself busy with survival. I did not understand the meaning of accumulating merits and virtues or of paying my debts and, of course, needless to say, the mysteries of karma and the reincarnations of life. My soul, that is my consciousness, had been that of a human being. However, after that special incident, I knew where I came from, where I would go, and what my mission was. My life has become quite distinct and clear. My soul, that is my consciousness, first restored my memory of the thousand-year world, and I gradually took on the soul of a super celestial being from the Elysium Celestial Islands continent. Moth Orchid. One more question. I can enter into the non-material world in my dreams. Is there any way for me to let my consciousness enter into the non-material world freely when I am awake? Guide. Yes, by the method of being free from the mortal body in meditation. 生命不灭定律. The 5 Laws on the Eternity of Life. Xiefeng. November 13, 2005. Translated by Transin. Dr. Christopher Langton, the principal researcher at Los Alamos National Life Laboratory in the United States, said, life's essence lies not in its specific substance, but in its form. This means that life's essence has nothing to do with material, and it is just a form, a structure without material and a sign invisible to our naked eyes. Genes, the building blocks of life, seen as the human genome with scientific instruments, is actually not life's essence, but only the expression of a sealed book of life. This is why people can make spaceships, but not even make an ant. It is not completely right to say that the essence of life lies in its form because its form is just a rigid structure, but life itself is movable with spirituality and consciousness. Therefore, a life is a non-material structure with spirituality. At present, we must understand how these non-material structures with spirituality come into being and how they are born. If lives are material structures, then all the things produced by people such as bicycles, clothes, desks, toothbrushes, pencils, and so on are also lives. Obviously, lives are absolutely not material structures, but non-material structures, and therefore only those who understand the whole of non-material world can create them. For humans, creating the non-material structure is the hardest nut to crack, but for those who understand the non-material world, it is just a piece of cake. The problem is that life cannot be spiritual with only non-material structures because they must possess spirituality. However, where can we get the spirituality? For the masses, this is an easy question to answer. They will say, it comes naturally, or it originates from evolution. If you ask further, what is nature and how can it come naturally? Life is a non-material structure with spirituality, but how do they evolve by themselves? Those people, with shaking heads and angry eyes, would say, naturally means naturally, and evolution means to evolve step by step. If you go on further, they will become very impatient and say that we are taking unnecessary pains to study an insoluble question. You can visit http://www.lifechanyuan.com to search and browse my critical articles about the theory of evolution. Now, we have to ask the questions. What is the universe and why does it exist? In time and space of the universe, we learned that the universe exists as order and remains relatively stable with the total sum of negative and positive energy always equaling 0. What is this order used for? If we ask what political order is for, what is the purpose of the legal and administrative order established by people, the answer must be that it is a social order established with the aim of serving mankind. Then, what is the order of the universe used for? I have discussed this very clearly in different sections of Chanyuan Corpus and Xiefeng Corpus. The universe is designed to serve life. If either perishes, then so will the other. Therefore, as long as the universe exists, life will continue. This is a basic law. Actually, though, the thing that concerns us is not the survival or extinction of the macroscopic life of the whole universe, but that of our individual lives. In other words, what we really care about is, am I going to die forever? This involves such problems as the structure of the universe, the balance of life, the morality of the universe, and others. So I have written some simple discussions about symmetry in nature, mysterious and great power, and the golden mean, perfect proportion. We know that the core of order is symmetry. The universe is orderly, so the universe is symmetrical, and the Taiji diagram is a vivid simile for this. We also understand that the universe is holographic, that one cell can reflect all styles and features. Therefore, we come to the conclusion that life is symmetrical. This symmetry is not only reflected in that of certain individual lives, but in all lives in the universe. From 36-dimensional space, we can see that the zero world, heaven world, Elysium world, cathode black hole body, the 10,000-year world, and the 1,000-year world are symmetric to the inflamed layer, frozen layer, hell world, plant world, animal world, and livestock world. The mortal world is at the exact interface of these two symmetrical worlds. In this way, the symmetry of the whole universal lives is formed, namely the simplified overall structure of life, heaven, the mortal world, and hell. The universe has universal morality. Once it is reflected in any individual life, it represents the evolution of that life, its transmigration and reincarnation. For example, if a person's consciousness and thinking resonates on the same frequency as the morality of the universe, then their life can evolve toward heaven, the thousand-year world, 10,000-year world, and the Elysium world. Otherwise, their life will evolve toward hell, the hell world, inflamed layer, or the frozen layer. Of course, this is just a general version. For a specific individual life, the evolution of life is much more complex. Why is life allowed to evolve? The answer is to maintain the morality of the universe and the dynamic balance of the whole of life. When the amount of any kind of life becomes too large within a limited space, it will have breached its symmetry. That is, it will have exceeded its limit. Similarly, if the amount of a certain kind of life is too small, it will also have breached its symmetry. This is just as with an industrial corporation with hundreds of employees. Only one general manager is wanted and a few division managers, a maximum of 50 sales and logistics personnel, and the highest number of employees should work on the front line. If there are 1 or 90 on the front line, more than 90 sales or logistical personnel, or more than 50 division managers, this corporation is certain to fail. In order to ensure the normal survival and development of any corporation, its allocation of personnel has to be symmetrical. Certainly, this symmetry focuses mainly on the energy aspect rather than the quantity. The symmetry must be movable and flexible, not rigid and stiff. This is like the Earth's allocation of water. Seas and oceans account for the vast majority at 97.24%, glaciers and icebergs are 2.14%, underground tunnels are 0.61%, and rivers and lakes are only 0.0001%. However, all this water has to keep on flowing and cycling through meteorological changes and the Earth movements to maintain a dynamic balance, or life could not survive here. The total amount of life's allocations in the universe is also like this. The amount of flora and fauna should be absolutely abundant. That of humans has to be moderate. The amount in hell is in no way smaller than the number of humans in the mortal world, and the amount in paradise has to be absolutely small. This certainly does not reflect a symmetry of quantity, but rather one of energy. It does not matter if there are a lot of ordinary people, but it does matter when there are too many kings. As a man sows, so he shall reap. Reap what one sows. Dispensing reward and punishment impartially and being meticulous are laws to safeguard the life dynamic balance and reflect the morality of the universe. Without this restriction of universe morality, the universe will be out of order and life will perish. The morality of the universe will not change according to the will of life. It is a law which hides in structural symmetry. As long as the universe exists, then too does its morality, and as long as it does, life will remain imperishable. This is another law of the eternity of life. Now, let us look at the quantity of life in the universe. In the introduction, I talked about the birth or origin of life. In The Greatest Creator, I described the origin of the greatest creator and the universe. In Humanity and Life, I also spoke of the origin of human beings and life. Now, I want to ask you whether life's quantity in the universe is overall, static, or dynamic. To be more specific, is the population of humans on the Earth constant or variable? If we look at the size of the Earth's population, we see that it is not constant, but undeniably variable. There were about 6 billion people on the Earth 20 years ago, but more than 7 2/3 billion now. This proves that the human population varies, which seems to indicate that the amount of life varies. However, when we understand the structures of the cosmic spaces, the essence of life, the law of symmetry and balance of the cosmic lives, we find that the total amount of life in the whole universe does not vary, but remains constant. This so-called variability is due to the transmigration and reincarnation of various kinds of life beings in the universe. People who do not know about oceans and icebergs certainly think that river water must vary seasonally when they see that it decreases in winter but increases in summer. However, people who understand about oceans, icebergs, glaciers, and weather changes understand that the total amount of water on the Earth is constant and never varies. The river with less water in winter does not tell us that the total amount of water on the Earth has decreased, nor does its increase in summer and autumn mean that the extra water comes from nowhere. It happens because water is brought from other places by the movement of the earth and the changes of the weather. Things decrease in some places but increase in others. Things with one nature increase as those with another decrease. The universe as a whole is constant. What changes is its form. The total amount of energy is constant whether the universe is expanding or shrinking. Otherwise, the law of the conservation of matter that we learned as young children would be violated. Once we understand that the universe is constant and that the total amount of water on the earth is also constant, we will know that the total amount of life in the universe is also constant. The so-called change is a change of life's form or expression, but not a change of its quantity. There are those who might ask where all the extra people on the earth have come from. Those extra people have transmigrated and reincarnated from heaven, hell, animals, and plants. Have you not noticed that while the human population has increased, animal populations have decreased? The lost animals have morphed into humans. This is unimaginable. How can it be? Is this not far-fetched nonsense? In order to understand this, we must understand the essence of life. In my introduction, we discussed the achievement of Dr. Langdon. The essence of life lies not in its specific substance, but in its form. And then we reached a further understanding that life is a non-material structure with spirituality. Material forms are not the essence of life. People are different from animals in terms of their life forms, but they are the same in terms of their essences, their non-material structures. The only differences are their structural forms. I hope we can all agree that gorillas are not humans, but only animals. However, in light of their life structures, the difference between gorillas and humans is only 0.1%. With a random comparison between rabbits, sheep, and humans, the differences between their structures is less than 0.2%. There are very few differences among the structures of Jesus, Sakyamuni, Laozi, saints, and ordinary people. But those tiny differences are enough to make huge differences in their lives' spiritual qualities. Therefore, when we say that many animals have moved on to become humans, we cannot judge them by their forms, but recognize the essences behind those forms. Otherwise, no matter how many pages I spend on it, we will never understand the transmigration and evolution of lives. So, according to that transmigration and evolution of life, it is imperishable, and this is another law about the eternal nature of life. Please refer to the evolution of life. We must now put forth this question. Since the total amount of life in the universe is static, then the increases and decreases of some species are the consequences of the opposite happening to other species. What about the situation in which a life is cloned by scientists? Does this prove that the amount of life can be increased artificially? Yes, cloning does increase the amount of life. Take humans, for example. Human bodies consist of trillions of cells. The universe is holographic and so are human bodies. A person can be cloned from any cell from any other person. Besides, the consciousness of life is rooted in its structure. As long as the structure does not change, the person cloned can possess the consciousness of the original person. Here comes a dangerous signal that cloning violates the natural and moral laws of the universe and destroys the symmetrical balance of life directly. Once it gets out of control, disasters will come in rapid succession and people will face catastrophes. In fact, catastrophes are not far away because of people's intelligence and wisdom. Taiji Celestial once asked me where the thousand-year world animals come from. My answer was that they are also life and also need to face transmigration and reincarnation. The difference is that their lifespan is 10 times longer than their equivalent species on Earth. People in the mortal world can be reincarnated as animals in the thousand-year world if they had good life qualities while they were here because animals in the thousand-year world live better lives than people in the mortal world. Some might ask whether the total quantity of life was determined in the beginning or if was capped after some amount of time. We all know that both the universe and life had their own origins. Since there were starting points, then the total quantity of the cosmic lives could not have been determined at the beginning, but gradually grew. After the birth of the greatest creator, he created symmetric gods with yin and yang. Then, he created angels in order to allow the universe to fill with happiness and vitality. These angels were divided into super celestial beings and Buddhas for the influence from the yin and yang gods. After the division of super celestial beings and Buddhas, in order to make them enjoy the joy of creation, under the permission and acquiescence of the greatest creator and the leadership of the gods, angels began to create lives, especially human being, according to the life blueprint endowed by him. However, because of the shortage of lower-level spaces of life, this creation destroyed life's balance of symmetry. He then implemented two great life extinctions events on the earth in which most lives were transferred to the Een world, the Hell world. In this way, many lives were treated unjustly. So in order to balance things out, the greatest creator created the 1,000-year world, 10,000-year world, and Elysium world. Since then, the quantity of life in the universe has reached its limit, and thus its total quantity was strictly determined. After this, Sakyamuni and Jesus were sent to the mortal world to educate people. Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, also received his divine oracle and traversed his own journey to guide people from their respective factions toward heaven. Humans have three origins, and this is why there are three major religions: Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam. The differences in the doctrines resulted from the different origins of their lives. This is just an outline of an outline, and its real complexity would be too difficult to explain clearly as it involves too many astonishing details. A little imprudence could cause major misunderstandings, so therefore it can only be perceived by heart and not explained verbally. Scientists are taking efforts to establish a unified field theory of the universe while the gods are endeavoring to establish a unified perspective theory of human beings. Both groups are trying to unify all the inharmonious elements into the harmonious way of the greatest creator, which is why phenomena such as angels descending to the earth, Martians coming to save the earth, New Age concepts, and others are appearing. The birth of life genuine is a part of this general trend. Those with clairvoyance can smell the era changing from life genuine. Because of this, all religions except for the three listed above are heterodoxical because of their false sources and should cease their activities and disappear automatically. Owing to the different doctrines and unconquerable qualities of these three, they should compromise with each other and gradually blend together in order to safeguard the harmony of cosmic lives. In the eyes of the greatest creator, all lives are equal and share the same opportunity. As lives are imperishable, everyone, regardless of their religion, faction, nationality, or race at present, should stop thinking about maintaining their own current interest, but only consider their future direction. Life has spirituality, consciousness, reaction, and emotion, but its spirituality comes from life's origin, the psychic energy of the greatest creator, which is also the Tao in Laozi's Tao Te Ching. Tao is the blood and vitality of the universe. It runs throughout all time and space and exists in motion and variation of all material and non-material beings. As long as the greatest creator exists, Tao works. As long as Tao exists, life is imperishable. Even if we wanted to end our own life, it would be impossible. We could only kill our physical body, but we could never kill our life because our life and Tao, the psychic energy of the greatest creator, are integrated. Owing to the eternity of Tao, the life attached to it is imperishable. This is another law of the eternity of life. Finally, let us look at whether or not the non-material structure of life will ever be faced with extinction. As we know, only energy that is attached to a structure can form a shape and play a role. We grow from germ cells into adults with complete organs and limbs under the absolute determination of the energy which attaches itself to our life structures. Without these life structures, energy could only remain energy forever with no way of becoming constituent parts of human bodies. We can imagine that if these germ cells were divided continuously, they would eventually enter the domain of quantum mechanics and superstrings. With a further step, they would enter the dimension of the spirit and consciousness, which are non-material. All material with forms in the universe are ever-changing and able to disappear, but spirit and consciousness are not. We always say that deities lurk 1 meter above our heads, but who or what are these deities? They are non-material and intangible. Although intangible, they are substantive and will never disappear. Each material has a structure and each non-material also has one. As a result, since non-material structures cannot disappear, then these non-material structures of life will never do so either. This is another law of life's eternity. In summary, life is eternal for the following 5 reasons. The universe is eternal. The universe's morality is eternal. Life beings can transmigrate and change. The psychic energy of the greatest creator, Tao, lives forever. Non-material structures are eternal. These 5 reasons determine the law of life's eternity. If my theoretical analysis above leaves you confused, then consider the facts. What facts? From the research reports of near-death experiences and the records of reminiscences about previous lives, one can understand that life is eternal. If you have not read about them, you can still sense and feel them in your dreams. In conclusion, life is eternal. 生命的灵光与色彩 The spiritual light and color of life. Xiefeng, January 18, 2007. Translated by Transin. Both the material and the non-material show light and color. Everything in the universe has feelings and psychic energy. Life is a non-material structure with spirituality, and every light and color is the result of its structure. Although both life beings and non-life beings have spiritual lights, those of life beings possess initiative, whereas those of non-life beings only reflect light from spiritual sources. The lights and colors of materials are visible, but the lights and colors of non-materials need to be experienced with spiritual perception. The stronger that a vitality is, the richer its color will be, and the brighter its radiance becomes. The spiritual light of a life has color which is determined by its non-material life structure. Life has levels. Although different levels of it may embody the same spiritual lights, their colors are quite different. Strong or weak of spiritual lights just indicates life beings waxing and waning, not their qualities, whereas their colors indicate their qualities, not their strengths or weakness. People can be divided into ignorant persons, laity, mortals, sages, and celestials. Celestials include saints, lofty people, and pure people, but also goblins and devils. This kind of classification is not based on the external characteristics of life beings, but rather on their intentions and qualities. Just as with diamonds, rubies, sapphires, opals, olivines, moonstones, aquamarines, tourmalines, amethyst, and other gemstones. All of them are stones, but their structures and qualities vary. Everyone has their spiritual light. Those of ignorant persons, laity, mortals, and sages are relatively weak, while those of saints, lofty people, pure people, goblins, and demons are much stronger. Ordinary people's spiritual colors are flat. Those of immortals are bright and intense. Generally speaking, ordinary people's spiritual lights are white with faint light, like a mass of vapor, but sages are faint-colored, which are often changing. With the perfection of structure and the purification of quality, the spiritual lights gradually show into a fixed color. Saints, lofty people, and pure people show colors of red, yellow, and purple. Goblins show blue and green. Devils show black. Buddhas, including super-celestial beings, show a wide spectrum of 7 colors. As spiritual lights belong to the non-material, they are invisible to naked eyes and are only visible to those with Buddha eyes. Generally speaking, auspicious lights indicate the life quality of heaven, whereas dark or absent light indicates one of hell. We can sense invisible, spiritual light and color when we socialize with others. If we feel fresh, open and clear, bright and beautiful, happy, warm, cheerful, inspired, and safe when reading someone's aura or articles, then this person's spiritual light is auspicious. If we feel pain, oppression, heaviness, discouragement, are unsettled, and feel negativity, depression, and worry, then this person's is dark. To make your spiritual light become more auspicious, you must perfect the non-material structure of your life. The more perfect it is, the more auspicious it will be, and people will sense your degree of perfection. If our consciousness is clear and ordered, then colorful light will show. If our consciousness is disordered, then colorful light will not show. We can be enlightened from a magnet or from ordinary iron. The former has polarity, the latter does not. The difference between them lies in the arrangement of their molecules. The former is orderly, the latter is not. Of course, our environment can inspire us as well. Just as when we go shopping, some shops are clean and tidy, bright and lively, and welcome us inside, while others are disorganized and gloomy and make us feel oppressed. The non-material structures of life are like those shops. Some people's life structures are like green hills with clear water, bright and colorful, while others are more like barren hills with muddy rivers, barren grounds, and evil. Different structures present different spiritual lights and colors. Looking up to heaven, we only see the blue sky and white clouds, but cannot see the concealed, infinitely natural scenery. This is because our spiritual perception is too weak for our consciousness to enter into the non-material world. What do we see as we gaze across the vast Gobi Desert? Most people just see sand, but some see the grand phenomenon of heat currents flowing across the Earth's surface, while others even see mirages. The longer you concentrate on something, the more you will understand it and find things that are invisible to others. I hope that everyone glows with auspicious and colorful spiritual lights and that everyone will see them. 生命的生死新概念 New understanding on the life and death of life. Xiefeng. April 3, 2011. Translated by Transin. The issues of life and death with regard to life do not exist. The only issue is that of conversion. So-called life and death are only false appearances which have mistaken the existence and disappearance of the carriers of life for those of life itself. It is a misunderstanding of life to say that it is born or dies. Since people do not understand the whole truth of life and its length, they define it mistakenly by way of their limited vision. Morning bacteria have no idea of the first and last days of months. Cicadas are unaware of spring and fall. Bacteria that emerge in the morning and die in the evening have no experience of what days are like. Cicadas that are born in spring and die in fall cannot understand the passage of seasons. Butterflies who fly and dance among flowers will never know the existence of winter. Humans cannot see the past or future, so humans always measure the length and depth of life against the more transient life. How do we react to morning bacteria saying that there are no dark nights? What do we think when cicadas say that there is no spring or fall? How do we feel when people tell us that there are no previous or future lives? People often talk about life and death by saying that someone is born or has died. Actually, what they refer to is only the birth, growth, and death of their flesh, the carriers of lives,